folks. It's Zach Elliott at Feel Free to Argue, and I'm back in Madison, out by one of the many lakes we have near my home city here, right by my wife's place of work here, getting ready to go out to lunch with her. It'd be nice to see her again. I haven't seen her in a long time. She's been busy holding down the fort here while I've been helping to hold down the fort in Ohio. I wanted to talk a little bit, not about Ron Susskind's book, which I finished on the way home. Found it an immensely profound experience listening to that book. So much so that I haven't entirely finished processing it yet, nor figured out how to compartmentalize some of the things that it talks about so that I can relay them to you. Because it's an enormous book, it has a lot of thoughts in it, and doesn't lend itself well to being broken into 10-minute YouTube segments. But one thing I did want to talk about was some of my experiences at the wake the other day, just yesterday. So bizarre how getting out of a particular area just makes you feel like you're farther away from it time-wise. I guess we just feel a relationship between space and time. I do, at least. Wasn't so much during the eulogy. That was later. But earlier on, there was a series of religious readings. And I had been given this thing called Letter from St. Paul to the Colossians. The interesting part about it for me, aside from not being hit by lightning for reading it, was feeling the power. Something which I hadn't really thought about or experienced in any kind of meaningful way. Mostly because I'd kind of cut myself off from it and deliberately sort of fled any sort of notion of religious celebration. I mean, I just try to avoid it as much as humanly possible. Because I've always been, well, because of my beliefs, it bothers me. It concerns me. But just as much as the few times when I've shot off firearms in my life, just as surely as I felt the power of firing a steel projectile at high speed in a way that could destroy things, I felt the power of what I was doing in that room, the power of those words over those people, the people who believed. And I felt in a very distinct way, through the prism of myself, that this power is in no way related to the morality of the person who is espousing it. For here I was, a complete non-believer, perhaps even an anti-believer. And yet, because I have the ability to read these words well, because I have the ability to, because I have a bit of charisma, I was able to generate feelings within these people. I caused them to make assumptions about me, probably assumptions that weren't true. It was all completely divorced from who I was. It was, in fact, something which could be acted, and which I imagine frequently is. The great science fiction writer Frank Herbert, the writer of Dune and all the various Dune books, at least until the recent ones, which were taken up inadequately by his son, He actually was a friend of the Kennedy clan, hung out with John and Bobby, even was invited to the compound. And while he really enjoyed the sense of being close to people who were actual actors in human history, it caused him to be enormously distrustful of charisma, because charisma is a tool. Charisma is a tool like a gun, like religion, in the sense that anyone can use it. And because of the fact that anyone can use it, and people who use it well will have power conferred upon them, and power is something that people generally find desirable, or at least a certain class of people find desirable, we have to be very concerned about it. We have to treat these things kind of with equal suspicion. Just as we would want to know the intentions of someone who has a gun, we should really know the intentions of someone who has charisma, or who is wielding religion. Because any of these things can be used by anyone. It's why Plato hated language. He realized that because of what he watched happen to his mentor and the person he idolized, Socrates, he realized that language can serve any master, and that this master is not necessarily the truth, that it is inherently self-serving. Anyway, that's my meditations as far as they've gone. I'm going to be certainly having plenty to say about the Susskind book. I've found it to be a very moving experience. It even moved me to tears on a couple of occasions. And I'm actually very concerned that what he views as being necessary is something that is going to be impossible. And I agree with him that it's necessary, and therefore the fact that I think it might be impossible concerns me very deeply. But that's for another video. As for right now, this is Zach Elliott, and you all know what you can do. You can feel free to argue.